Okay. Evening, ladies and gentlemen, we'll call this meeting to order. First order of business is disclosure of human interest and general nature thereof. Seeing none, the minutes from October 29th, was there any errors or omissions? Moved and seconded on minutes. Moved by Moore, seconded.
I'll second it.
Yes, sir, all in favor?
Your worship, if you can speak directly into the mic, thank you.
All in favor?
Yes.
Carried. Delegations. 2021 draft budget. Arun, pass it over to you.
Thank you, Worship. Good evening, members of the Budget Committee. Today I have my budget presentation for you. Am I clear? No. So, is this better? All right, is that better? So today we are going to look at the 2021 budget. This is part of the multi-year budget that has been approved previously by Council and Committee. We are going. What's this now?
You get the arrow down.
So, like last year, I'm going to focus on two areas that affect budget and planning, the money area and what issues affect the money for the municipality. Okay. Committee may recall from last year that I had advised that when we pay taxes, whether it's income tax or property taxes or sales taxes, it's usually about 9 cents of every dollar in taxes that an average Indian spends is collected by municipality. So it's a very small share of the tax dollar that comes to the municipality to provide a vast array of services, ranging from roads maintenance to street lights and regular day-to-day services as well. Most of the municipal spending is dominated by various legislative requirements. We have minimum maintenance standards, for example, for roads, and we have requirements for other activities that the municipality undertakes for street lighting, for all other services that it provides. So how do we then use all these to provide services? The mission statement and the vision statement for the Township of Malachi is quite clear in that it identifies the municipality's assets as the top priority. It speaks to the diverse, safe, and sustainable community as its focus, and it also focuses on fiscal responsibility while providing a variety of services within the legislative framework. So from this broad vision and mission statement, we need to identify our priorities and strategic objectives. So overall, from the mission and vision statement, we can see infrastructure maintenance and community safety and customer service are our primary goals. I have also noted economic development and climate change as key deciding drivers that affect municipal decision making. Having said that, during 2020, we had to prioritize certain emergency activities. We had to make sure health and safety was maintained and protocols were in place that allowed for the continuity of service at the same time while taking care of our staff and our residents. There are a few documents that determine how we can proceed to achieve these strategic goals. Some of them are developed by council, while others are dominated by other stakeholders. For example, the official plan, to an extent, has the county at stake in there. The asset management plan is driven by regulations from the provincial government. the road needs study or the structural, Ontario structural manual, which determines the bridges and culverts, is from a third party again. So these are all different guiding documents that help us determine how we can achieve our strategic goals eventually to get to our mission statement. At the federal and provincial level, we have quite a few different programs that have been announced recently. Our most reliable source of revenue is the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund, OMPF. However, in the last few years, we've seen that there has been reduction and there has been strong messaging from the province that this particular initiative is under review and may be reduced eventually over a period of time. It has dropped from, over the last 2 years, it has been reduced by 5 million, and it was expected to drop further in 21, but given the current circumstances, the province has held it at the same level for 21, and 22 is hoped for. We are not sure at this point. They have not given any clear information. Keeping in mind the different emergency issues that every municipality and every organization is dealing with, the feds and the province have come up with a variety of other assistance programs. The Safe Restart funding, there's also an infrastructure stream that has been announced, which would help with retrofits or repairs of municipal buildings in order to be able to function during the pandemic times, so that we can have proper protocols in place. Broadband and cellular funding has received a lot of focus. I'm sure everybody has seen all the news releases from the Ontario government where it has recognized that we are relying more and more now on work from home, study from home, and hence it's critical that there is strong connectivity available throughout the province. There are also, in the recent budget update that was released by the province last week, there is also some discussion about the changes that they are currently looking at to the Assessment Act. They have held back the new cycle that would have started for property assessment. MPAC has not gone ahead with that. So we are going to see property assessments at the same value as what we had then in 2020. The phase-in was to be completed and a new cycle would have started from 21, but that is at this point at least being delayed. So we have seen all these promises of lots of money coming to us from different levels of government, but at the same time, I wanted to highlight in this slide that there is a huge deficit looming throughout the country. All provinces are facing shortfalls and they are trying their best to provide support to the citizens and municipalities. However, how long this will last and how much support will be available remains to be seen. So we have to be fiscally responsible. Financial sustainability means that we should be able to manage our finances in a manner that allows us to take care of all the assets and services over a lifetime. So what are our expenses? Most of the expenses, 60% are for services and materials that we purchase to provide those services. Roughly about 40% is on staffing and benefits, which includes your training or any, so it's not necessarily just wage and benefits, but anything related to staffing would be part of them. And you'll see from 2018 to 2019, it's been pretty similar, where the expenses in actual providing of services or purchase of materials is the largest component of our expenditures. And these expenses are then funded from a few different sources of revenue. But as you can see, from 2018 and 2019, roughly 60% of our stream of funding is property taxes. So we are heavily reliant on tax revenue, followed by government grants and transfers, about 20-21%. And then a small portion comes from any user fees, licenses, permit fees that we issue to the residents. So since tax revenue is our largest source of revenue, let's look at our property assessment and the levy that we have so far. So if you look at the top slide, Cecil, does that not?
Yeah, there's just a little gap or delay in 5 minutes. It'll come in a second.
Okay, there you go. So this is the top chart shows our assessment right now at the 2020, what we got on our assessment roll. And then we have put together the in-year increase to our assessment that's currently available through MPAC. These are not final numbers. They were still in the process of inputting all their data and finalizing the assessment rolls. So we do not have, these are only preliminary numbers. But as you can see, there is an increase to the CBA, but this is strictly due to reclassification or any supplementaries that have been processed through the year. This is not new growth as such in terms of new or revised assessment as part of the assessment cycle that MPAC typically would have conducted. So you'll see that overall there's about 0.7% of growth to the CBA. And there is a significant switch from residential to farm category, which means that the tax levy applicable is lower than what would have been collected from residential properties or other tax classes. So the chart at the bottom shows how we have our tax levy set up currently for 2020. And then using the same tax rates, if we were to apply the same tax rates, there's no change to taxes, then you will see that the 2020 in-year CBA is such that we would not collect the same amount of levy revenue in 2021 if we were to keep the tax rates at the same level. So by the simple switch between classes, we find that there is a change in the levy revenue that can be collected. And that's why we need to increase our levy to a certain extent in order to keep up with the current services and this current cost of providing those services. When we say there's a 1% increase and another municipality has not had that high an increase, it's relevant to their tax base and their tax classes. And you'll see that for some, it's hardly under 20,000 that a 1% tax levy increase would apply. Whereas for some other municipalities, the 1% would bring in revenue of over 100,000. For us, it's roughly about $80,000 of that amounts to a 1% tax levy. This evening, we have before you the operating and capital budget. We have a summary of changes where we need committee discussion and direction. We also have some specific reports to address the needs that the staff recommend we address immediately so that the staff can begin to move forward with those projects. So I would like to now draw your attention to the budget report that you have in your agenda package. While I switch to the budget package. So the budget report here for the evening speaks to the operating and capital budgets that we have in front of you. The comments and the financial section identifies the specific areas where changes are proposed. The the summary of proposed changes, which is your attachment number 2. This is where you will see the changes. There's very few areas that require adjustment. We have information on the OMPF funding, so we have adjusted the budget. It has come in a little bit higher than what we had initially budgeted, so there's an increase to the revenue. There is a significant increase to the insurance charges that we are expecting. At this time, we do not have the final quote from the insurance company, but we have had communication that is expected to be 15 to 20%, and therefore we have an increase appropriate to that in the proposed changes. We are expecting more details in probably the coming few weeks. They have communicated that they are in the process of sending that information on to us when we last checked with them. The other adjustment is the council remuneration. The council remuneration review committee completed its work and presented to council last week, and those adjustments were approved by council, and so the remuneration has been adjusted accordingly. There had been a placeholder that we had put in the budget last year, and so because the approved adjustments are actually a little bit lower than that estimate, we are actually showing a little bit of savings on that line as well. So you'll see it's a negative when you see the increased column. The dog tags have been reduced because council approved permanent dog tags, so we don't need to purchase dog tags every year, so that has been adjusted. The OPP has provided their invoice, so their billing this year for next year is actually lower than our estimate. So that has been adjusted downwards, so that helps with reducing the pressure on the expenses. Committee will recall that at the last council meeting, there was a report presented on the some of the immediate recommendations that staff were proposing to be taken up from the service delivery review report. So there were 4 projects that have been identified in there, or 4 initiatives, and 3 of those are included in the proposed document in front of you tonight. We have the compensation study that has been proposed to be partially funded from reserves. So you have the compensation study, which is your 4th line in this document, at about estimated at about 30,000 to be partially paid through reserves of 10,000. So there's a net of 20,000 expense there. The other item was the broadband strategy and the broadband towers project that is being brought forward to council as a separate report tonight. So that will be discussed separately a little later. That is part of the capital projects, and it is expected or presented to be funded through the unconditional grant. So there is no impact on the tax levy at this time. The other project in that report was the separation of the CEO clerk position, and that has been included in the proposed budget. There is no direct impact. We are able to accommodate based on how the new staffing structure falls and the different levels at which new staff is going to be starting right now. There was one other project that in that service delivery report, the growth of the Springfield area, the water servicing project, that has not been specifically listed in the summary of changes. That is something we will be looking for direction or further discussion from the committee and recommendation to council accordingly for adjusting the budget accordingly when we come back to the committee again. I can go through each attachment if that is the desire of the committee, or I can take questions in the budget.
Well, let's take questions, and if we need to get down to a specific chart, then we can do so at that time. So questions from Arun on what's been presented so far? Mark?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Peter Baru. Future looking to factor into the 20% insurance hit.
Your wish, sorry, what is the question?
In your report, you're saying our insurance will go up 20% possibly?
That is what the insurers have indicated, that throughout the insurance industry, we have seen that increase already in 2020, and it's expected to go up even further, is what has been communicated to us. So for 2021, I have estimated a 20% increase. You see that that's the last line in that summary document, and then a slightly lower increase in 22.
What, $20,000? Is that fair statement?
The increase for 21 is 47,900. If you look at the last line on that summary document, you will see the change there.
And we have had no claims.
Annual claims.
Claims, insurance claims, we've had no claims.
We have had a few in the past, and I'll ask the CEO to speak to that.
Your worship, through you, the municipality has had claims. There are insurance claims that are submitted on a regular basis. It's whether or not those claims are successful is a different question. So we have had very little claims where it has required us to pay out any significant portions that our insurer has had to pay out. However, in every single claim, there is at least a preliminary review in order to provide a defense of our case. So in many instances, it doesn't result in significant payouts, but there is always in every claim the requirement for the insurer to provide a defense or a response. Some of them are just a few $1,000, some of them, of course, are much larger depending on the situation, the complexity of the claim. So we have not had any large payouts, but we absolutely have had claims.
Yeah, it's not enough to cover $20,000 in my opinion, whatever it might be.
If I may, your worship, one other point of clarification. I've had several discussions with a number of my colleagues throughout both the county as well as regionally. And there have been at least 3 municipalities that have gone out to market this year, thinking that maybe if they went out to market, they would see different results, of course, if we tender. And in fact, actually, they have not seen that result. All of the responses that I'm aware of, everyone throughout the entire industry is seeing significant increases around the range of 20, some up to 30%. And some of those are local municipalities that are seeing as high as 30%. It seems to be the trend of claims generally for municipalities in the last few years. This is being seen as kind of a catch-up year. So there have been a number of claims throughout the province and even throughout Canada for municipalities for things like flooding, or things that other type of climate change claims, where they're seeing significant payouts as a result of claims to municipalities for a number of those types of incidents. So in the past, what we've usually seen were claims that were typically for motor vehicle collisions, injuries, liability, those types of things. Those don't appear right now to be the significant claims that insurers are having to make payouts for. Climate change situations seem to be an item that typically hadn't been in the past, but now in recent years we're seeing more of. So this is just a trend throughout the industry, and every municipality where we've had claims in those areas, the entire municipal sector is seeing claims to be able to respond to those.
I'm not happy with it, but there's not enough competition.
Any other questions for Arun on what's been presented so far? Tony?
Just as an overview, I think in the opening you were talking about the levy being planned for an increase of 3%. And I think the statement that's used in the report is to cover the cost of inflation. So that was back in 2018 when this budget was initially planned. We know this year inflation is next to zero. So what would be the actual reason to increase by 3%? Other than the insurance, which is not, still at $21,000 increase, is still not 3%.
Through your worship, yes, right now, the inflation rate has trended fairly low. However, all projections, when you look at StatsCan, the website, for 2021, it is projected to be at least 2.5% for the CPI. And for the municipality is also the non-residential building construction interest index, which is something that is quite critically how it affects us, because we undertake a few capital projects which are directly linked to purchase of materials and purchase of services as well. And that is also estimated to go up at least by 2.5%. So with those two indices in consideration, the budget has been set up to absorb a roughly 2% inflationary increase. That's how the budget from 2020 to 2021 has been set up. And to be able to cover that rate of inflation, it is necessary to propose a 3% levy increase. And as you can see, the very first line in that summary of changes document actually is expecting the reduction in tax revenue, because the way the subs and the omits and write-offs have come through so far this year, we have seen significant reduction in the tax revenue, where we had expected to get more tax revenue because of the changes or the reclassifications. We have actually seen a reduction, and so I'm proposing that we do not expect that revenue to be that high for 21 and 22. So we will need that 3% increase to be able to cover not just the 2% cost of inflation, but also any other increases like this insurance, for example, which is at 47,000 estimated right now, and any other increases on the capital side that we may get hit as we proceed with the actual projects, because just with the emergency circumstances, it has become difficult, or it takes longer to procure materials and to procure good quality materials.
Any other questions? Comments? Okay, we're prepared to move on the first portion of number 1. No objections. Mover in the second, report number FIN 2022, that year 3, 2019 to 2022, multi-year budget operating and capital be received. Draft 20 to 21 to 22 budget summary and detail be received. The draft user fee schedule for 2020 to 21 and 2020 to 22 be received. Mover in second. Mover. Lewis. Ritter.
Just proceed.
Just proceed. All in favor? Sure.
Yes, Your Worship, just a point of clarification. So council isn't being asked to approve those this evening. You're being asked to recognize the submission of them. As the treasurer has indicated, I believe earlier in the week, she sent an email out to council saying that we anticipate a lot more discussion and dialogue at the next meeting when you had an opportunity to digest them further. This is simply an opportunity, if you have specific questions or concerns this evening, to bring them forward. If you really think that there are certain sections of the budget document that might require some more analysis or review, to give staff a heads up on that, so we can continue to work on that. But no, we're not looking for final approval from council this evening. This is an opportunity to get the information on the table in front of you, have some preliminary discussions, provide any type of feedback that council or the budget committee may have to staff, and then be able to be ready to actually get into the nitty gritty, for lack of a better term, at the moment at the next meeting. There are definitely some additional reports in the agenda later on that we're going to be hoping the council will give some firm direction to. But for right now, the operational budget, the way Arun has submitted it, it's just for council's information at this point, receive it, and then we can have some detailed discussions at the next meeting.
Capital projects, are you doing that or not?
No, that will be mine.
Go ahead,
So, good evening. At the first budget committee meeting, it was requested that staff identify those capital, priority capital projects that should be recommended for council approval in the budget planning determinations. So that being said, this report identifies some immediate work that's required at the workers here to protect the pier deck from being undermined by the traffic wave action. This consideration was prior shown as to be determined in the capital budget, and staff have determined that it's work that must be undertaken immediately. And a solution has been sought with the peer engineering staff, and the work is expected to proceed this fall. Additionally, under that previous to be determined item, where we've identified here works as a new inclusion to the proposed 2021 capital budget. This work would include an engineered solution for a paved surface with the ability to mitigate water from the wave action test in the pier deck, along with surface water in the road. So this design work is proposed in the capital budget as a cost of $10,000 in 2021, with the constructed solution to follow in 2022. So it was requested by the committee for some additional information on some other capital projects, including the 2021 capital budget. So I've also commented in this report on the wood chipper and the bridge and culvert renewal program. Regarding the wood chipper, the current unit was originally planned for replacement in 2016, and at that time, it was extended to 2022 for replacement. So in recent years, there have been considerable cyclical end-of-life repairs in the unit and significant costs incurred for those repairs and rental equipment in the meantime, and additionally, staff downtime. So for these reasons, staff recommended to include the chipper replacement in 2021 capital budget and defer the replacement specifications to the equipment. In the meantime, staff have been in contact with mechanics to prepare the existing equipment for the upcoming training season. And I should note that this item is not proposed for as an immediate priority, since there are various training currently pending, but this is just for additional information that we made. And additionally, regarding the bridge and culvert replacement program, the Class PA for the column line culvert was prior included in the 2020 capital budget. This RFP was delayed while waiting for the results of the biannual bridge and column inspection program, just to ensure that a higher priority asset was identified. So following receipt of the 2020 inspections, both the Heskin and Road culvert and the BLM culvert have been identified as high priorities, requiring mitigation measures in short terms. So accordingly, it's been proposed to carry forward and use funds from the 2020 program and repurpose those funds to Heskin and Road culvert rather than column line culvert. And in the future use, it's proposed to follow the Heskin and Road project, the line project, and then in 2023, the column line project. So in summary, staff is looking for a budget committee direction for council to proceed with Florida's parking lot design work and the Heskin Road PA design projects. Also ensure that we are showing any project in the event that any funding may come our way. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
questions for that on the capital?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For the parking lot, so I'm reading this correctly, an actual correction of the situation would be until 22.
That's right.
So what would be, how would we address even safety concerns? So even in the winter, so what is anticipated is this massive ice rink forming in that area. So I know you mentioned staff maintenance, but possible to maintain the area as safe for a year and a half.
Through your worship, there are shorter term solutions that could be sought. However, there's considerable funding issues there that do need an engineered solution. So with the upcoming winter, to get a hard surface down there, it's not entirely practical to get that amount of work done before our winter season hits. So unfortunately, it is will be a maintenance concern throughout the seasons, but having looked at the area myself, it does require an engineered solution. There's a large drainage tributary that does come to that area, in addition to the leaves over top of the year. So we need to ensure that there's kind of good outlet for possibilities for infiltration and appropriate our service there. So rather than looking at it in the short term, I'd like to propose a final solution there. So it will, yes, to answer your question, it will be a maintenance concern for those.
So when we look at some additional safety measures, I don't know, I'm open to suggestions, but I hate to suggest extra salt when it's right near the water. Does it need to be regularly checked by staff? And I don't know, what is the plan for that interim and how do we ensure safety?
Yes, that's what I would propose, is that it'll require constant maintenance and inspections, and if it came down to it being a severe safety concern, that the area would be cordoned off, it needed to be for that purpose.
Any other questions from the council? There is a recommendation from Matt. We go for the entire preamble that just was stated on the Fort Bruce Peter parking lots, wood chipper, and the environmental assessments. We're ready to move on that one. You don't see any problems? Mover and seconder for the recommendation. Here, mover. Rick.
Yep.
Okay, here. Okay, grants.
Members of the budget committee. Okay, in front of you are the 2021 requests for grants from the service clubs and the cemeteries. The total requests for the clubs amount to $29,125. This includes $1,000 to be held for the year requests. The total amount for cemeteries, $26,500. The service clubs, the budgeted amount is $26,817.69. So requests are over by $2,307.31. And the total amount budgeted for cemeteries, $24,500. The requests are over by $2,000 from the budgeted amounts. So I don't know, would you like to go through each one and decide?
Well, everyone's got it before them. I think what we'll do is any issues with the recommendations should be brought up.
Your worship, if I may, I'm not certain that staff has specific recommendations, that they have simply indicated what the requests are and what the budgeted amount, the preliminary budget amount that was included, actually previous to the request actually being submitted is what I understand. So there is some placeholder amounts already in the budget for these particular groups. And then read whether or not council wishes to award those that request more any additional funds, or stick with the essentially the placeholder amounts or the historical amounts that have been approved in previous years.
Well, certainly, there is some that are looking at a large increase, starting off from museum, the federal captain at 5,000, they're requesting 8,000. And as much as I want appreciation for the museum, they need to do some fundraising, they are doing fundraising. But I would suggest we keep another $5,000. See a lot of hits on it. Okay, let's move on to the community policing, and ask for a $500 increase. Last year on that, is there increased expenditures?
Leave it, remain as is.
The 1,500?
Yes.
Everybody seems to be out in their red. Knights of Columbus are looking at a $100 increase. Any issues with that one? Okay. So it's $1,200. Fairmore is going from 1,000 to 2,000. It's a jump. I'm going to suggest 1,000, see where you get this. 1,000 it is. Safety Council, they're not requesting any, so they obviously didn't use the money. Clowns Association is the same. The Fund Day is the same. Brewers are the same. YS, obviously from your activity, is from reduced. Parents Council is the same. South Dorchester for Optimus is 3,800. Is this based on usage? 3,800. Corner cover, there's no request for 2021. Family Fun Day, 225, is the same as the previous year. Springfield Parade is asked to go from 1,000 to 1,500. What's your thoughts on that, folks? Which was an increase.
Recommend
What's that like?
recommend support for the which this year. We're going to lose issues, revenues.
Okay, Max is suggesting that we support the $1,500. No issues? East Elgin Housing Initiative. We're looking some seed money, and they're requesting $3,000 this year. I don't believe there was much going on largely because of COVID. I think they shut down or posted for 2020. I'm going to suggest that we deny the request until a later date. Things may change, but at the present time, it's not up to. Any issues with that one?
We've never had any report on it.
Well, I know that just seems I am in contact with some of the members, and that they shut down when COVID started, and have not renewed them. Find out. Okay. Cemetery board is the same as the previous year. Springfield Cemetery board is the same. Luton requested a $2,000 increase. Now, are you any further comments on that? You have an inside track?
Yeah, they just put in the report that they want to finish off the fence along the front. They've done all the rest of the boundary and put a gate with a sign, so that's the extra funds to finish off that project.
What's council's position?
Me, Worship.
Go
I
ahead.
just wanted to mention that the service clubs, the discussions that we just had and the amounts approved, because there were no increases, and the 3,000 for the housing initiative has been tentatively put on hold. I would say we are at about 20,600 of committed funds, whereas our budget at this time at least is 26,800. So there is some room there if you wish to provide assistance to any of the service clubs or use some of those funds for the cemetery.
Yeah.
Through you, I don't know how to say it, but 3% increase. And you're saying there's more money to throw at things. I can tell you that I don't like a 3% increase to start with. And if we don't start saving, you either, back to the old story, you either reduce your expenses or up your income, or it doesn't work. But you do have to cut or you can cut.
So you suggested we leave $1,500?
Yes.
Scott, requested we leave the $1,500 as it is. Spread the repairs over a number of years rather than 1 year. As the next level.
Who pays for the maintenance of cemetery? Is that through the township? Or is that look after the board?
No, your worship, the cemetery still has an active board, so they look after all of their own projects. The municipality assists them with the annual contribution here, but otherwise the cemetery funds itself.
Personally, I don't think the extra money would be over the line if you're doing maintenance, grass cutting, the other people I know. Back last year or a year before, they were building a fence, trying to keep the area of children, which those houses have developed in and around and next to the cemetery. So personally, I have no problem with water. Thank you.
Well, Scott has suggested we leave it at 1,500 and Max is looking at an increase. So I guess I'm looking at a straw vote on which one we want to go to. Mark?
Rather we come up a little bit, meet in the middle. I mean, the pretty broad plan for cheap on the cemetery, some are relatively good, but there's maybe somewhere in between it. I'll throw it out there.
Well, we got a compromise position, 2250. What's everyone think? Nice.
One more suggestion here. If we don't give them enough funds, so the board of the day, keep things going down there, what have you, we're going to have another printer to come in. We're going to come in and present Michelle or someone with the books and $15 or $20 a month in bank account and say, thank you very much. This is all your scholarship to after so. Thank you.
Councilor Moore is not entirely wrong, that has definitely happened twice in the past.
Well, we're moving from 1,500 to Mark suggests 2,250, which is kind of a compromise position. So I see at least 4 heads in the audience, so I think the 2,250 is the bottom. And that covers the grants, and we'll see if we can hear back from staff in regard to the East Elgin Housing Initiative.
Yeah, your worship, if I may, I'm not sure whether or not they have provided any type of reporting back as a result of this application for additional funding. Maybe we can ask Andrew to comment on that.
We just feel that the application as to what they're requesting and what they provide. But I can reach out to them and find details about when we open and what services they are providing currently.
Thank you for another. Thanks, man. Chester,
Yes, going back to the part of coverage, kind of bothered me that the request for our lender was just an oversight on where administration is not putting a request in. Because part of coverage is kind of on the oversight.
Through you, your worship, I did reach out to them and speak to them, and they said they had an overwhelming amount of donations. that they were gonna request funds this year, but this housing initiative is under them. It's a lot under their organization. So I think they wanted to focus more on that this year than the food bank itself, so.
I am part of that board, just the community is very supportive, especially financially. They didn't want to do food drives, the contamination of checks, going to do the regular basis. They're in pretty good position. Okay, anything else under the?
Quick question, Mr. Mayor, is our policy that we don't provide the grant if the event, if it's for an event and the event is canceled, do we then withhold the money? So for,
There were several organizations last year that did say they were canceling their events and didn't require the funds. So you'll see on the chart from last year's actuals that there are unused funds from last year that certain funds didn't need the funds as events were canceled.
Any other questions of the grants? So we're waiting for the balance, moving sector report number FIN 20-21, the 2021 grant request from community group to receive, and the following 2021 grant request from community groups to include in the draft budget as we've already discussed. Moving sector one. Linsky and Whitaker, all in favor?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, development charges.
Sorry, just give me a moment to look at it. Your Worship, this report is a follow-up to the DC study that was completed last year. We had updated our bylaw. However, there was legislation that the province was reviewing and proposing changes, and which was then put on hold when COVID hit the country. But they since have proceeded with that and have brought in some changes to the legislation, which requires us to update our bylaw. Considering that there are some beneficial changes where we would be able to use more of the DC reserves to permit studies or other activities that are growth related. Staff is recommending that we move ahead with the update to the bylaw rather than, because there is a timeline to the completion of the update. However, staff are recommending that we proceed sooner than later. And the request is also to permit awarding the services contract to Watson and Associates. They hardly a few months ago completed our DC bylaw. So it would be very beneficial and efficient to have them complete the shorter version of it to update our bylaw.
Okay, thank you, Lynn. Questions for Lynn on the development charges contract?
through you, Mr. Mayor. Now, if we're doing an update in 21 and we have to update it every 5 years, will we be able to push back the date? So we were due for 24.
Yes, it would be 5 years from the last update. So it would be from 21 when we have an update.
Certainly makes sense for getting the Watson already involved. Mark?
I guess we did this for 2019.
Yes, that is correct. It was, I think, the first council meeting that I attended as treasurer when Gary presented the updated DC bylaw to the council. In July, roughly it was completed. It takes approximately at least 6 months to complete the study, the 5-year update that we did at the time, because there is public consultation and so on. This update will be a shorter version because there are only certain areas that need to be updated and revised. so it's not expected to take as long and it won't be as detailed.
12,500. You have a fairly fresh one already, right?
Yes, it will update the certain sections that are affected by the legislation and the rest will remain the same.
It's not something like you all there to do. That is a professional planner, and you do the person, so I don't know. I'd say $12,500.
Your worship, through you, no, although our new director is a registered professional planner, this is actually economists that are and financial specialists that are working on this particular work. It isn't something that a professional planner is able to undertake.
There is a recommendation, this movement second, report number FIN 20-19, is that development charges, update study and contract and receive. This is recommend the contract with professional consultant services, update development charges, background study, bylaw as a single source procurement. That notwithstanding the remainder of 2021 and 2022, budgets have not yet been approved, the municipal council will request award the service contract for the updated development charges background study, the bylaw to Watson Associates Economists, in the amount of $12,500 plus taxes. It being noted that such service contract will be funded from the development charges. Moving secretary. Lewis,
I'll second it.
Serta, all in favor?
Yes.
Opposed? Carried. Okay, Broadband. Who's doing that one?
Worship, Cecil, I think, is going to start the process, and I think Erwin is going to assist.
And my apologies being my first time presenting, so bear with me. I'll try to keep this short. Fast and effective internet connection provides potential success in delivering our services and interacting with residents. It's also an essential tool for citizens to participate in the community and for businesses to reach and respond to their customers. Reliable digital connectivity is also critical to support economic development and attract investment in our life. We know that we have significant connectivity challenges in parts of the township. Solutions needed to address this long-standing priority for our community to support innovation and economic development. In 2019, the township received $558,507 as an additional grant from the province as a part of the government's plan to support some of Ontario's small and rural municipalities and the limited capacity to plan, modernize, and improve the way that they provide services to the communities. Examples could include service delivery reviews, development of shared service agreements, IT solutions, capital investments, or other projects. Based on the above parameters, the municipal staff reviewed potential projects, programs with a view to modernizing and improving the way that we provide services to our communities. The council approved $60,000 for the enhanced website project and directed the staff to return the business plan for broadband infrastructure improvements. Since then, the council contracted performance concept consulting to complete service delivery and organizational review. In their final report, the consultants recommended the township embrace the opportunity to be a broadband provider to the local municipality and its neighbors for its own cost savings and operational efficiency and to generate alternate streams of revenue. Broadband is now essential to our daily existence and economic growth. Broadband connects residents and businesses to buildings and devices and around the world, creating a digital overlay for physical world to revolutionize how we work, play, live, learn, govern, and inform our residents and connect with the world. The provincial and federal governments have made multiple announcements regarding this need for rural high-speed infrastructure. Recent announcements of enhanced SWIFT program funding are designed to jumpstart the movement to bringing broadband services to rural Ontario. As well, the provincial budget confirmed announcements on broadband and cellular, including an additional $680 million to support broadband and cellular connectivity for unserved and underserved communities. The COVID-19 pandemic has emphasized the need for rural high-speed solutions to address e-learning and work from home scenarios, and now to meet the position to provide local high-speed Wi-Fi service across the municipality. Excuse me. The municipality's current inherent setup can be considered as fair to good, whether in terms of the cost of the service. It is critical the township has high-speed, reliable internet service for smooth day-to-day operations, particularly in the current environment. As well, there are large pockets of land within the township's boundary that do not have access to high-speed internet. Some areas do not have access to internet at all. In your agenda is an attached map that shows anticipated coverage by the SWIFT project, as is in future investments. There's also an additional map attached showing the potential coverage of proposed broadband plan and status quo. And 7 will be continue to be central area.
Sorry, to interrupt, Cecil, do you want to actually speak to the map that you just?
I was going to, I was actually going to finish and then if there are questions, address that, my apologies. So I propose 3 options to my administrative counterparts. I'm just going to talk about option 1 and I'll let Jordan and Morgan Shell follow up with options 2 and 3. In option 1, county development has launched a project to develop countywide connectivity under the SWIFT initiative. Also, the county has formed a connectivity committee which is trying to address the areas that are not covered by SWIFT. The need to increase high-speed internet connectivity through Elton County was identified as a key priority by Elton County. The establishment of the county's connectivity committee was in direct response to this priority. Generally, the goal of the committee is to identify high-speed internet solutions for Elton County's rural residents and organizations to champion high speed across the county. The committee has been meeting for several months, and while the discussions are advancing, it is uncertain how well the Malachi's specific needs will fit within that overall project priorities and timelines. SWIFT is a regional broadband expansion project initiated by the Western Ontario Ordinance Caucus and delivered in partnership with member municipalities and governments of Ontario and Canada to improve access to high-speed internet services across southwestern Ontario. Areas within the project region that do not meet CRTC universal objective of 50 megabits down and 10 megabits up are eligible for SWIFT funding. As noted earlier, the attached map shows the areas of the township that are not eligible for SWIFT funding. In order to address these areas, the county could be requested to expand its project scope to include these areas. However, it is anticipated the cost may have to be borne in part by the township. The timeline for fiber technology to be installed and to be in service is expected to be at least a year, and after the award of the contract report, the township will have minimal control over the plan, costs, schedule of the project. At a minimum, the service model options depend on A, the county's willingness and ability to expand the project to cover the township's defined areas, B, the township's willingness and ability to fund the expansion on the terms and timelines of the county project, C, the solution type, be it fiber, hybrid, fiber wireless, and D, it's publicly owned versus public-private partnership, open access versus closed access. This is that we often expect to take a significant amount of time and money to become a reality and not be the best initially. All that in
Thanks, Cecil. So actually, I will ask you, Cecil, did you want to draw attention to the maps that we have attached and speak to what the plan would be?
If you wouldn't mind opening up the room, I just don't have it on my laptop because of the recording.
If I can do this. So this map, I believe, shows the current availability of connections.
That's correct. So I won't go into very specifics, but green is the optimum CRTC minimum area. This is provided to CRTC and National Broadband Committee by the local ISP that's in the area. Yellow, orange, red, those are all below the CRTC mandated 5010 speed. Keeps going. So in my proposal, that's more detail, is to build 2 towers at 2 locations. These 2 locations are some of the highest points in the municipality that we own land on. And given their heights, once we have somebody to help design this network, we anticipate we should be able to cover approximately 2,000 parcels. Now those parcels could be a mix of residential, farm, commercial, industrial. I didn't go into those details so much as to give you an idea of what the coverage could be with these two towers.
This is the attachment with the estimates, how we have arrived at the estimated savings. Cecil briefly described option A that has been proposed, which is where we would essentially be self-reliant for an internet connection. So the towers would be such that we would be able to take internet service from a service provider who would use those towers to provide us internet. Is that correct?
It's sort of a hybrid solution, and sorry for what I'm looking for. So currently you're paying for two different types of connections from the local incumbent. One provides a point-to-point connection from our municipal office to council chambers in Springfield, Coast Department, Lines, and South Coast Department. There's an ongoing cost for that every month. Part of the plan will be if we install these towers, we could eliminate that monthly cost and increase speed at the same time. The second part of this, again, assuming the towers are built and are high enough, we could also offset our internet costs of our actual connection to the outside world by looking at a second ISP. In this case, it's Integris of St. Thomas I looked at. They have a wireless wireless solution in St. Thomas that's 185 feet. And on their initial analysis, they could reach either of the tower sites to provide internet to the municipality at a reduced rate over the local ISP.
So what the option A calculation shows is that currently we are paying over, and let's just look at over a 10-year period, we would be paying approximately 182,400. And if we continue with the same provider, these costs would actually go up to about 312,000. And when we do proceed with the construction of the towers, that cost is roughly estimated. This is a very preliminary estimate. As you can see, there are several nodes which identify the factors that would affect that cost. We have a cost of about 180,000. And then there would be these other devices that would be needed for the actual connections to work, which is estimated roughly at about $12,000. So these are the initial outlay costs. These are upfront capital costs, which are proposed to be covered by the unconditional grant. So there would not be any impact to our tax levy or to the other reserves that we are currently holding, nor would there be any cost of debt because we are not borrowing from any outside entity. If we were to make use of Integris, preliminary estimates that Cecil has shows that it would cost us about 65,400 as opposed to the 312,000. So we would right off the bat save money on an ongoing basis. So that would be a direct beneficial impact on our operating budget. We would also be able to recoup the costs because of the significant savings from 312 to 65. We would also be able to recoup the unconditional grant money that we would spend. And so we would be able to cover our capital costs as well. And that leads us to the net savings over 10 years of 54,600 that's been noted in your report. So if we were to leave aside the capital, which is funded from the grant, we would have far higher amount of savings that would be on the operating side. We are open to questions, or I can elaborate on the next two options as well if you would like.
Yeah, let's go over all the options. Sure. I'm trying to absorb all this. Go ahead.
So going on to the second option, here Cecil has had discussions with a variety of internet service providers, is that right? Yeah, with ISPs. And so we would build these towers, which would provide us the ability to be self-reliant for internet And then we would simply lease those towers out to a third party who would use that to provide services to their own customer base. So we would not have additional complications of operating and managing a customer base and so on. We would be able to gain some revenue by leasing those towers out to that third-party ISP. Cecil, if you want to speak.
So in my initial investigation of this, I contacted a number of local WISPs, wireless ISPs, out of Tilsonburg, one in St. Thomas, Belmont area. Great interest in getting access to these towers. The advantage obviously is to bring a competitor into the area and actually give customers the ability to have a service provider who actually provide service in their area, or at least give people who maybe are with the incumbent a second choice, which is well, like to have this competition. It's the safer bet, obviously. It's basically just become a landlord. We built the structure, charge the rent, and the rent you see on there, which is a ballpark price, like they're based on some other companies who rent towers in the area. It's adjustable. This is just sort of in the middle of the pack. There's a number of different ways we could increase or decrease that revenue depending on how you look at it. But this basically still means Malachi working about our own connection by ourselves, which is great still. We're just providing space for a third-party company to occupy and provide service that is their current.
Mark?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through Cecil. Cecil, there must already be somebody out there who uses satellite technology, because I know in my area, the guys that have satellites, we're renting out silos for the station to move the signal, so can you move on that?
Through your worship, satellite's wonderful. Latency is a big problem with satellite in coverage. So it is being deployed right now. It's still in beta, and it's an American company. I'm sort of of the mindset that a local company, a local WISP, would probably have a better vested interest in what it provides locally, and it would be more reliable, more timely as to contacting the third-party satellite company. Any existing satellite technology up until this point has been slow, expensive, and very, very high latency. Anybody who's ever used, and I think if they're not names, but they're going to come in, ExploreNet, as an example, their satellite based, very expensive, very slow. There is new technology coming. Theoretically, it looks good, but you are talking about something that's a few thousand kilometers above the surface of the earth, whizzing by, and could be susceptible just as much as any other technology as opposed to solar storms or other weather events. Terrestrial wireless that we're proposing here, closer to the ground, is proven technology, has been around for a number of years. And there are still a lot of operators out there relying on it, and it's reliable. So again, that's my personal opinion, but obviously it's
That's fine, I'm just not sure. Okay, tell me how the signal is to my house from the service. I guess I'm confused, but I don't understand that yet.
You could compare it to satellite. The difference being it's not coming from space. It's more like your cell phone. So you have a cell phone tower. Each house will have an antenna which is pointed directly at that tower. That's how they get their signal. So the greatest distance you can go, it depends on the technology, but in most cases, the greatest distance is 5 kilometers.
Okay, so everyone would have to have an antenna.
Correct.
Does the weather bother that?
There's always going to be that situation. Depends on the frequency you use, depends on the distance, depends on if you have trees in the way. Most of the modern technology has been used to be able to cope with signal loss.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
Through you, your worship. I've talked a little bit with Cecil about this and talked to the public a little bit about this actually over the last while. There's a couple local farms that are using Wi-Fi. Walker farms use it, love it, nothing better. They would, ExploreNet. I live at the south end of our municipality. I pay for ExploreNet's best program they can provide me with. And you will not see me Zoom once to a meeting because I cannot do it. It's not possible from where I live. talking to as many people as I've talked to about this, because we're in the garage, like in a bar. There is one person I don't believe that didn't say to me that they would pay more if they had a good service for internet, especially knowing if it was coming back to the municipality and if it generated revenues that it's gonna come off their taxes, they pay double what they're paying for the service they're getting in the rural right now in our neck of the woods. And not just our neck of the woods, all over the municipality. My father's lives across the other line, he has the exact same problem. Like it's a problem. And people go, if you're at home, I have a daughter right now that can't do her homework from school usually because, yeah, our service sucks. So, yeah, as a rural person that speaks to rural people, especially when you start talking revenues, which is the only time I've heard it brought into the whole equation tonight, which is the best news ever, is revenues. And I hope we can get people's attention and get on board, because if not, it's just going to go by again and you just lost the race. So that's my little input, and I think it's something that should be definitely seriously looked at. And if we don't, and I was asked personally get on board with this program. Thank you.
I couldn't agree more. That's why I am a member of the connectivity committee in Alvin, and we're moving as fast as we can. I just wanted to point out to Councilor Lewis that in this proposal, you're not covered.
I see, no, I see that.
Right? So, so it's still leaving a good portion of the Mountline out. So it wouldn't help you, it wouldn't help me. Sorry, Cecil, did you have anything to say to that, or do you want me to continue?
I want to, through your worship, talk to Councilor Lewis first. The part you're talking about is actually option C, so I'll let her discuss that and give you more details. Option B is more or less just renting the space, and we're not worried about where things go. And if I need to, Deputy Mayor, you're right, in this initial proposal, it doesn't cover everybody. Again, this is a, if you call it an investment, option B, it's the hope that if you bring somebody in and give them a space to purchase their equipment and get started, it should propagate on its own. But that's the problem right now. It's hard to get any sort of reliable access into these areas. So either we need to step up and provide it for somebody, or as a country will do so too, it's going to pass us by and we have to wait for the county development to make a choice.
Your worship, if I may just briefly add to what the other staff have indicated, is that right now there are 2 towers that are proposed and you've got the circles around it. And that one is an initial investment, but certainly staff have had some other conversations in that if this was an option that council embraced and we move forward with, certainly there is an opportunity to look as the system and the service develops to construct additional towers, to then be able to look at broadening that area. So we only have so many resources right now, so we're trying to be able to focus those resources and get the biggest bang for the buck. But absolutely, the intention would be is that if we were successful, if council was, as I said, was going to embrace this particular option and move forward, then there is absolutely the opportunity to enhance that moving forward, and we'll be able to use the revenues that are generated from that system, from that endeavor, to be able to fund the future expansions of that particular program.
Okay, thanks, Michelle. I'm also on the connectivity committee, and in 2021, there's going to be over $6 million put into our account, remember, that's across the country. This is a backbone, and I think the best case scenario is probably 30% improvement, but it still leaves the other 70% that don't have that option. So the private providers have that option to bring out the internet to that other 70%, but most of the time it's not cost effective because if there's only 5 houses in a mile, it just, they just can't, do a business case for it. So we need something very similar to what Cecil is describing to go to that last mile, and certainly, I think this is an opportunity that we should examine. Tonight, you're just looking for an RFP to vote to give us a price, is that what you're telling us?
I'd like to actually, if you could cover option C also before I ask you for what I'd like to ask for, if that's okay.
You're recommending options.
Well, I want you to see the numbers, see if it makes sense. Regardless of which option we pick, we're going to, in my opinion, require the expert, a consultant, and developer, somebody to build this to confirm this is going to meet what I expect it will. But I want you to see the opportunities, depending on which choice you decide you want to go with. Either way, the consultant will cover all 3 bases, and we'll just let it sort of the review, give you some options. These are just very high level numbers based on some templates and some questions from other wireless ISPs in the area.
So tonight, your recommendation is to simply go out for an RFP, and these people will bring us back some sort of proposal. And then we can move on to that.
That's correct. They'll just verify that these locations are good. They'll give us specifics to height, tower requirements, et cetera. And then we can use that to develop a plan.
I don't see a dollar figure on the RFP. We got that?
No, right now, we are seeking approval to be able to initiate the, even putting an RFP out, and then based on what interest we get and what votes we get, we would come back to council for. Is that correct?
Your worship, through you, the proposed estimate for the consultant services is 20 to 25,000. And again, that would be funded from the unconditional grant. That would be to design the system, and then we would move forward with, ideally, the recommendations would come back with the same, or the report would come back with the same recommendations that staff are contemplating, and then there would be an opportunity to move forward with actually constructing that solution.
I think that would be a good investment.
Through your worship, I will humor Cecil and present the third option, which is truly a income generating, long lasting solution that he has brought forward. So in this case, the plan is to be able to, perhaps Cecil, you want to speak to that?
Basically, it's a variation of option B. So as opposed to allowing a third-party wireless ISP to occupy these towers, I'm proposing the municipality itself consider becoming that wireless ISP. It's a greater cost. There's equipment that we can do purchase, other resources to start it. But the advantage to that is we have control in where we go with it. We have revenues that we can generate. Those revenues that can be reinvested in those areas that are not serviced in this initial phase. When it's successful, it's money that can be used to reinvest, and as opposed to just covering about 3% of the area, have the goal of covering 100% of the area, and possibly beyond that. There are other municipal areas, and not too far from us, that are underserviced as well. There's an opportunity, if this can proceed, that we all can share in that, or at least Malachi itself can use that revenue and grow, and use that as a means of funding projects, not necessarily through tax dollars, but through potential revenue.
Thank you, Steve. And once again, that's the consulting service would be examined, right?
That's correct, Your Worship.
All tonight we're looking at is, do we want to put an RFP out for the consulting service to give us options? Sorry?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good Cecil. You hear a lot of talk about revenue, not hearing anything about expenses. I mean, are we going to be doing this work ourselves? Is it my understanding?
Yeah. So, through your worship, the third option would basically require a functioning department or a separate standalone entity, and that's something that has come up in the service review report as well. They had recommended what they called an MSC, a Municipal Services Corporation. So there would be a whole set of operations. If we were to go with option C, which is a very larger scale than option A or B, where we would be providing services as an internet service provider to the residents or to a customer base in the township and potentially in the region. So yes, that would be a bigger proposal, and it would require quite a lot of setup and making sure we are capable of running such an operation.
Yeah, so that could be a huge, huge expense. A lot of people, a lot of vehicles, a lot of technology. So just want to make sure I know what we're getting into here. I totally agree. We need more service out here. And your math.
Through your worship, this proposal is expected to bring in significant amount of revenues, and it would be self-funding. So it would be a separate entity that makes money to fund its operations and also bring in additional revenues that would be available to the township as the owner of the entity. And those are the details that we would expect a consultant to bring forward.
That's good. We'll look for it.
Yeah, I have a few questions because if there was that much money to be made, somebody, the private sector would be here already. We've heard it at the county, that it is hugely expensive to operate. So I want to first clarify that the study would be to actually develop a full business plan. Because there are a limited number of potential customers. So if, let's say there's 150 customers, we're going to have to, if we're competing against private ISPs as well, then we're going to end up splitting those revenues. So this is an initial draft, but I want to clarify that the consultants would not only be verifying the physical aspect of the specs, but also the actual possibility revenue, because I would like to see letters of intent of, let's say for option B, when we're asking ISPs to rent or lease space on the towers, I would like to have letters of intent with potential customers. And so it needs a lot of research. I'm also curious that it doesn't address, I think in the past we've heard about the port cruise challenges, and in this initial proposal, it doesn't appear to cover port cruise, unless I'm reading that wrong.
Let me speak to you, Your Worship. It specifically does not cover port cruise, you're correct, in terms of broadband service, but in this proposal, there is a suggestion for a tower to be located down by port cruise, preferably at the top of the hill. Initially, it was sort of a couple different things. One, most of port cruise, at least according to the SWIFT map, is serviced with 5010 service. So for us to put wireless broadband in there would actually be sort of a waste of money. However, and ask Director Bruce Smith, over there, Fred Smith, sorry. We also know there's a CB radio challenge down there. I know there's a repeater that was been put in a while ago that allows the fire emergency services to communicate on one channel. It's been identified just in initial consultations, with a couple of the vendors that looked at the tower at higher location would actually service the fire emergency services. The municipality itself, even if it was just for ourselves, could put a wireless link down to port cruise, which could be serviced for tourism, selling cameras, for example, down to port cruise for the flooding, again, for fire emergency services, public Wi-Fi. I know we don't go to the beach for that, but there are beaches that do offer it. Port Burwell is done for a private entity. Those are just benefits that could be accomplished if the infrastructure was there. And again, and so in this proposal, there is a tower requested for that location. It's not specific to broadband. I would imagine when we have that discussion with the consultant, they might find that a larger tower would be a good idea for there. Because just outside of Port Cruise, there is no service, especially if you go west of Port Cruise. But again, that would be dependent on how large the tower would be, is that the right location, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That can be a question.
So the other thing I would like to look at closely is the 10-year window, because my understanding is ultimately wireless is a stopgap. Wireless will not meet the speed internet needs 5 years from now. Is a projection. We all need to be connected to fiber eventually, so that we need to work toward that. So I would want, again, whoever is going to do this study to look very carefully whether 10 years is actually realistic. Because I'm all for an urgent stopgap solution while we build fiber and we get fiber to everybody. That's how we're going to support our seniors staying at home and support our farmers and businesses. So 10-year is a bit of a flag for me. And probably my biggest concern is using the unconditional grant, because it's unconditional, which means we could be using it for anything. And meanwhile, just as recently as Monday, the federal government announced yet another grant to propose to support broadband. And so I would need to use an unconditional grant that we could use for something else when there's specific broadband money being announced. And I believe the fund that came out on Monday has a fast track streamlined process for shovel ready. And so whatever we can do, there is lots of money. The pandemic has, made everybody realize, the government included, that we need to fund this, and I think there's movement, so that's probably my strongest hesitation.
Your worship, if I may comment on that, it is absolutely the staff's intent to apply for all of those grant funding programs. We've been doing research already. It would appear at first review, and we have not had a detailed, had an opportunity to look at the detailed specifications for that grant that was announced on Monday, but it looks like this project is very promising. The timelines look like they would work based on our preliminary review. We do need some. The challenge we have is that we have the high-level review that we're very confident is going to provide the results that are outlined in the report, but we need that consultant report in order to do that last, give us those last specifications. So while the report recommendation that is in the report indicates that subject to budget approval, we'd like to be able to issue the RFP, staff, following the announcement on Monday and some of the other recent announcements, would actually like to amend that recommendation and actually ask for council's consideration this evening to allowing staff to issue the RFP to start that process so that we know whether then we can meet the timelines for these grants and would not have to actually access the unconditional grant, or at least as much of it if that is the case.
Michelle, would this going to have to be in by December 31st? Read that.
No, the icon, there are two intakes. So the first one has expired. The second intake is January the 8th is the deadline for submission, which again is why we're hoping that if we could actually move forward very quickly with getting a consultant on board, we could have enough information to be able to apply for that particular grant. Construction, of course, is a longer period of time after that. And the Universal Broadband Fund, which is the federal program that was announced, has until February 15th in order to make that submission. And that particular grant funding program could be as high as 75% of the total costs. So, I mean, it's up to, it doesn't mean that that's what we would be successful for, but if that was the case, absolutely, it would mean that there would be a large amount of the unconditional grant that would still remain following this particular project.
Any other questions or comments in regard to the broadband? I do think it's probably important that we move very quickly on this. So the resolution you have before me, is that the one you want to present tonight, or do you want to amend that?
Your worship, actually, staff would like to recommend an amendment, and that would be that notwithstanding that the 2021-2022 budget has not yet been approved, that the municipal council be requested to authorize staff or direct staff to issue the RFP, and then the remainder of that resolution will exist, so that essentially we can get started as soon as after next week's council meeting, because this recommendation from this committee tonight, if that's what happened, would have to go to council for final approval, but otherwise we would move forward, and in the meantime, staff would be moving forward with preparation of the RFP so that we could issue it almost instantaneously after council gave the final approval next week.
All right, everyone heard the amended portion that Michelle just gave us. Any questions, comments? Moving to secondary, the amended broadband strategy. Louis, Linder, all those in favor?
Yes.
Okay, correspondence, anything?
And that would be a worship other than what was in your agenda package.
Our next meeting is December the 10th at 7 o'clock. Now we go to the open question period. Anybody have any questions that wish to bring up tonight, gentlemen? Bill? Right over there in the mic. Yeah, the one over here, Bill.
Can you hear me? First of all, I'd like to congratulate staff on the wonderful budget they provided in terms of the format and the information. You can actually read this and understand stuff and think of questions, what we've been waiting for a long time. So I wanted to congratulate them on that. What I wanted to suggest was that maybe the department heads could go back and revisit their budget and compare the actual or revenues for the last 2 years and compare it to what the budgets are for the coming 2 years. Just one line that I noticed was in 2019, the budget was $7,400 and they spent under $2,000. In 2020, the budget was $7,400 and they spent under $3,000. But yet going forward to 2021 and 22, they're still estimating $7,400. So that to me says there's either unusual circumstances, which I don't believe there is, or staff hasn't adjusted their budget because they haven't spent that much in 2 years. So why would we think they're going to spend that in the next 2 years? So I just looked at the budget when I finally got it and noticed that and wanted to comment on it. A couple more things. I think if I understood correctly, you're going ahead with the development charge process again for the $12,500. Is that correct? It seems this consultant charges $2,200 a meeting, so you don't want to figure on getting too much for $12,500. Couple of things is in their report, which is 170 some odd pages, and I looked through it pretty well, all of it again. The cost to bring water to Springfield is $15.4 million based on April 2019. When they're doing this next step, I'd like to pick them to suggest what the cost would be in 2022. 2019 is gone. If you take a 3% increase on 15.4 million, if we were to do this project in 2022, the cost is 16.8 million. So we shouldn't be talking about 15.4 anymore. There's a new figure. Also, the consultant offered to meet with staff to find out what the impact would be on Springfield bringing water to it. That's one of the 4 meetings that they outlined in the proposal here. I'd like to volunteer to sit in and let them meet with them as well. I think who better to tell them how it's going to impact Springfield than some of the people from Springfield. So I'd like to, if you're looking for a volunteer to meet with them, I'd certainly volunteer. One more thing and then I'll be done. It's my understanding that the 4-year budget was to limit increase in budget spending to 3% each year. In this report before you tonight, it refers to the percentage increase as a tax levy increase. A tax levy increase and a budget increase are two different things. So in the example of if your assessment was $300,000, your taxes was going to go up, I don't know, 60 some odd dollars or whatever. But that's a levy increase. What your budget is a budget increase. They're different figures, and I wish in the future if staff was going to refer to this, they talk about budget increases rather than levy increases. Because as you demonstrated tonight, changes in the assessment are outside your budget, but they impact your levy. So, and just to finish up, and I appreciate you letting me take the time to do this, based on the example, the actual tax levy increase is 3.2%. And that's without taking into consideration that you're adding another $5 on for garbage again this year, I believe. So if you add that $5 into the increase, which you promised to do a number of years ago, the actual tax levy increase is 3.49%. So rather than refer to it as 3%, for residential people, it's 3.49%. So I find these terms very confusing, and I'm sure I'm not the only one in the room is, but I would appreciate if in future, I think the staff should refer to it as to a budget percentage increase, not a tax levy increase. That was agreed upon before your time, but that's all I have, and thanks for allowing me to speak.
Thank you. Martin, do you have a comment?
Yeah, excuse me, I want to speak to the rural broadband internet. I agree that we need to improve the internet in the municipality. Look at the map here, we can certainly see some areas there. If I look at the 2-tower setup there, that certainly doesn't really nail it in the sense you own those properties, but it doesn't cover off some of those red roads. So I'm not so sure that we should be there. One observation I did make was at the Malahide level is how much internet costs for this township alone. And I'm not the guy to talk to, but to me, if you put an internet connection at 7 buildings at $100 a month, you'd have it all covered up at $8,400. I don't know where 30,000 goes annually. And I mean, I get the answer today, but that confuses me. I'll just leave it there. We've got some internet service providers in this area that are working hard to improve, and I'll one and there's others. And I think if this municipality goes, or anyone goes into the business of providing that service, don't expect them to improve or maintain or continue to expand in anything we can't cover. If we go and pick the next low-hanging fruit, then nobody's going to come along and pick that. Nobody's going to come over to Mr. Lewis's place if we go and grab Mount Salem and 2 nice places. So if we've got money to spend, which it sounds like we have, I think we should be building towers and subbing it out to those who can put equipment on there. And when that equipment goes obsolete in 5 years or 3 or 10, or gets struck by lightning, it's not our baby. And I think if we build 4 towers or 6 or whatever it takes to fill the municipality, that may be the best investment that we could do. And then let everybody else, they can bid for it. We can put it up for tender. Who knows? Maybe it'll go like a house and they'll bid it. No, wouldn't that be nice? Anyway, in the expressions of, in the estimates and expressions of interest, I see a lot of revenues, but I don't see a lot of expenses there, and that's been brought up. A lot of what I'm saying has been brought up, but, you know, who's going to staff this? Where are they going to set up office? What are they going to drive? Like, I have a lot of questions there. So, my thought is, if we would put towers up, let those who are in the business service the local people at a reasonable rate, they will still be competitive at that point. Let them go there. And you know, we can only proceed if we think there's no health risks to all this. We might be frying ourselves while we're waiting for the Swift to be able to put everywhere where it goes. But that's the topic for another day. So, but where's the realistic? If you go on one question, I want to see a realistic business plan for each and any proposal. That's my question today. Thanks.
Thank you, Mark. Jim?
I don't have any paperwork to read from it. I want to mention to you, over the past, I guess, 3-4 years, I've had several people in the Springfield area ask me about the railroad property. I only look myself, and I'm very concerned more to the west there, where there's much property in the village that's never been developed. And I've been working with Jeff Urick on this, and he says the rules have changed somewhat on the environmental on it. But what I did today, I took another tour, and I went down to Hagersville, and they actually built a new railroad building right on top of railroad road there. And it's a building where it's a lunchroom and a headquarters. I slipped over to Jarvis, they're fairly new in the last 4 or 5 years, 3 years, new Tim Horton, but right on the railroad property, right smack right where the line from. And then you go, I don't know if you've heard of the Wyndham Center down that way. There's 7 new homes been built right back in last year, right on the railroad property. And down the Wyndham Center, there's a huge development going in there. Where the development, what it would be, is like developing all that property that's up in the old Midwest. The railroad only 250 feet of right of way through there. That's approximately 1,000 feet long, and that's where all everything's growing up in the brush and stuff. So I don't know if the council can support getting that thing moved and tidying up the village. I certainly am working with your help. Anyways, I'd like to see some support from the council.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Anything else from council? Staff? I'm sure we got an adjournment somewhere. Okay, so we're gonna meet again on December 10th at 7 o'clock. So move in second of the budget committee adjourned meeting. Move in second. Let's get ready. All in favor?
Yes.